All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to this ultimate high-yield explainer designed specifically to give you the exact vocabulary, the frameworks, and those crucial citations you need to absolutely ace your exams on human rights law. Look, whether you're prepping for a final or you just need to structurally organize these concepts in your head, you are exactly where you need to be. So grab your notebooks, because we're about to take pages of complex and, let's be honest, sometimes completely overwhelming jurisprudence and break it down into clear, memorable concepts.
To keep things highly focused, we're following a strict blueprint today. We'll be covering 1. Defining human rights, 2. Classifying rights by function, 3. The 3 generations of rights, 4. Rights in the Constitution, and finally, 5. Landmark case laws. By the end of this, you'll know exactly how to structure those exam answers from start to finish.
Okay, Section 1, Defining Human Rights, the Foundational Concepts. Let's lock down the exact legal definitions and characteristics that examiners are actively hunting for when they grade your papers.
Listen, if you want to instantly elevate your introduction, here is your major exam tip. Always, always anchor your answers with Ronald Dworkin's brilliant concept of rights as political trumps. While everyone else might just write that rights are important, citing Dworkin shows you understand that these individual claims literally outrank ordinary communal interests. They act as a trump card to prevent the government from just crushing personal liberties for the sake of some majoritarian advantage. Trust me, it's a fantastic way to score points right out of the gate. But beyond just a great definition, you've got to quickly list these 3 core characteristics in your answer. First, they are inherent and inalienable. You're born with them. No sovereign power can strip them away because doing so violates human nature itself. Second, they are universal and egalitarian, meaning they apply uniformly across the globe, zero discrimination. And third, they are indivisible and interdependent. As we're going to see a bit later, enjoying civil liberties depends entirely on the fulfillment of economic and social security. Showing the grader that you get that these aren't just mere privileges handed down by a government. That's the exact kind of nuance that makes them smile. Moving right along to Section 2, Classifying Rights by Function, the Jurisprudential and Operational Divide. We're going to break these down to understand how rights actually evolve and mechanically operate against the state. Think of this as an evolutionary pipeline. Before they ever become enforceable laws, rights progress through these 3 jurisprudential stages. It starts with natural rights. Think John Locke and the philosophical bedrock of life, liberty, and estate discovered through human reason. Then they evolve into moral rights. These are based on a society's ethical conscience, but, they lack any formal enforcement. Finally, they crystallize into legal rights. Rooted in thinkers like Bentham and Austin, these are the actual enforceable norms fully backed by the coercive power and sanctions of the state. Charting this pipeline in your exam shows profound conceptual depth. Now, this operational divide, massive exam focus. Mechanically, rights operate against the state in 2 distinct ways. On one hand, you have negative rights. These essentially tell the state to leave you alone, freedom from interference. They impose a strict duty of inaction, acting like a shield. On the other hand, positive rights are claims to state action. They require the government to get off its hands and actively allocate resources, like for education or healthcare. They function as a sword to demand public services. Shield versus sword. Remember that metaphor? It is incredibly effective for your essays. All right, Section 3, 3 generations of rights, Karel-Vossak's framework. This is the most widely accepted structural framework for organizing international human rights. And honestly, it's where things get really fascinating. Here is a huge pro tip for your essays. Always attribute this structural framework to legal scholar Karel-Vossak and explicitly map his 3 generations directly to the 3 core pillars of the French Revolution: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Examiners absolutely love this historical connection, and it pretty much guarantees you full marks for structural understanding. Think of this framework as your ultimate cheat sheet. It compresses pages of dense source material into something you can easily memorize. First-generation rights tie to liberty. They are civil and political negative rights, stuff like the right to vote or freedom from arbitrary arrest. Second-generation rights focus on equality. These are positive economic and social rights, requiring real resources for things like health and housing. And third-generation rights, they represent fraternity. These are collective or solidarity rights, focusing on massive global challenges like a clean environment and peace. Definitely memorize this. Let's transition to Section 4, Rights in the Constitution, the domestic sphere. Let's see how the framers of the Indian Constitution took that global international matrix we just discussed and integrated it domestically. So the framers ingeniously split these rights into two operational spheres. You've got Part 3, fundamental rights. These basically manifest first-generation civil liberties. They are strictly justiciable, meaning, yes, you can enforce them directly in court via writs. Then you've got Part 4, directive principles. These manifest those second-generation socioeconomic goals. Now, while Article 37 makes them non-justiciable, meaning you can't strictly sue the government for not providing you a house, they are absolutely still fundamental in the governance of the country. But here is exactly how you separate an average answer from an exceptional one. Cite the Vienna Declaration of 1993. The crucial point you want to argue is that modern jurisprudence proves these rights are entirely interconnected. The courts are constantly blurring the lines between them. They routinely use the positive, non-justiciable socioeconomic principles of Part 4 to expand the scope and the meaning of the enforceable fundamental rights in Part 3. Finally, Section 5, Landmark Case Laws, the application. Theory is great, but application is literally everything in law. Let's see how this all builds into the 4 landmark cases you absolutely must cite. First up on our exam focus list is Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. This is the definitive case on personal liberty and administrative fairness.
Okay, here's the breakdown. The executive impounded a journalist's passport without giving any written reasons or a hearing. The core issue: must the procedure under Article 21 to strip a citizen of liberty actually respect natural justice? The Supreme Court delivered a historic yes. They ruled that procedure established by law can't just be some arbitrary process a legislature makes up. It has to be just, fair, and reasonable. This ruling brilliantly illustrates that first-generation civil rights simply cannot be compromised by arbitrary state action lacking natural justice. It essentially imported substantive due process right into India.
Our next key case expands the very definition of what human life actually entails under the law.
So in Frances Curley Mullen, a detainee was heavily restricted from meeting her daughter and her counsel. The issue asked if the constitutional right to life stops at mere physical, animal survival. The Supreme Court explicitly said no way. They ruled that the right to life encompasses the inherent right to live with human dignity, which totally includes mixing and mingling with fellow human beings. When you're writing your exam, make sure to emphasize that this judgment created a constitutional baseline for humane treatment by deeply integrating moral philosophy right into the enforceable text of Article 21.
Now, if you get a specific question on the right to livelihood or the interconnectedness of rights, Olga Tellez is your absolute anchor case. Look at these facts. The municipal corporation executed a massive, forcible eviction of impoverished pavement dwellers in Bombay without any notice or alternative accommodation. The issue was whether the negative right to life under Article 21 could actually protect a positive economic claim like livelihood. The Constitution bench ruled that yes, if a person is deprived of their livelihood, they are effectively deprived of their life. This is literally the best example to show your examiner how interdependent different generations of rights truly are. The judiciary successfully read a second-generation economic claim directly into a first-generation civil right. Incredible stuff.
For our final case, we're going to look at how environmental protection found its way into constitutional fundamental rights.
In Subhash Kumar, heavy industrial units were discharging massive quantities of toxic waste right into the Bokaro River. The issue was whether the protection of life extends to environmental protection. The Supreme Court held that, absolutely, the right to life includes the enjoyment of pollution-free water and air for the full enjoyment of human life. This landmark ruling is your prime citation to prove that collective, third-generation solidarity and survival rights are an absolutely essential component of individual liberty in modern jurisprudence.
And that brings us to the end of our masterclass. Remember, human rights are incredibly dynamic. They evolved from natural law to civil liberties, expanded into economic equity, and now they're safeguarding our collective environmental survival. Keep these frameworks, from Dworkin's political trumps to Vasak's 3 generations, super fresh in your mind. Notice how they constantly build upon each other in these landmark cases to preserve human dignity. If you structure your answers using this exact progression, you'll be perfectly equipped to ace your exam. But beyond the exam hall, I want you to consider this. As our world faces unprecedented technological and climate crises, what is the 4th generation of human rights going to look like? And more importantly, how will you defend it? Think about that, and happy studying.